This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Irene, before we head into a conversation on surviving the COVID seasonal blues, let's take a moment to thank each and every one of our listeners. Season 2 has been amazing because of your support, your encouragement, your feedback, and your comments. It is clear that you really enjoyed our conversation with Renee Graham.
Absolutely. And every week I say a tsunami of thanks because it is a tsunami of thanks, not only for your feedback. Oh my God, the emails, the tweeting that you do of our show. And by doing that, you bring in new listeners. I can't thank you enough. So that's why it's always a tsunami of thanks. But before we get started, let me give praise to the creative genius of our producers, Mr. Cavante Smalls and Ms. Kyla Wright.
Yes, amazing.
Indeed.
Brilliant young folks. Brilliant. Well, Irene, according to the Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center, the United States has at least 13 million confirmed cases and over 263,000 deaths of severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, aka COVID-19. This holiday season has been like no other. From the loss of family members and loved ones, to the loss of employment, to the loss of housing, to the loss of everything and anything one could imagine. We as ministers have been working with parishioners and non-parishioners alike and want to chat today about surviving the COVID seasonal blues.
Yeah. And one other thing that is lost that we're trying to sort of rev up with folks is the loss of hope. And that there's indeed a finish line. We're coming off of, the Thanksgiving holiday. And one of the things that I am just sort of thankful about is what I call, it helps me to reconfigure my life, in not only in terms of this holiday season, but what this COVID, pandemic is asking of me. And one of the things I thought about, because this Thanksgiving, like so many, we couldn't have our loved ones with us and family and friends. We just could, even if you went out for a walk, you had to, stay a distance here. And during one of my walks, one of the things I said I'm thankful for is that our ancestors really have given us a treasure trove of how to survive a pandemic, one of which has been actually racism, but other times in which illnesses have disproportionately impacted our families and our friends and our communities. And one of the things I thought about is that what has set our ancestors differently from everybody else in the face of what I call this yoke of oppression and continued and doesn't have a finish line. And one of the things I thought about is a valued life. It is those things that are important to us that gets us up every morning, and then this African proverb, making a way out of no way. It has been the creative genius. It has been our kind of organizational principle. It has been the theology and the wellspring from which we continue, as they say, keeping on.
Irene, you mentioned our ancestors, and I think that's a brilliant place to start because they endured so much more than we could ever imagine. And yet they were not only resilient, but they were brilliant about how they were resilient. I mean, they figured things out. In many ways, as you mentioned, they left a blueprint, one that we may not have really acknowledged, though, and in this season of COVID-19. So I'm thinking about the relationalness. Our ancestors were very relational. And in this season, I think it's so important for us to seek even deeper relationships with dear friends, family members, loved ones, and availing the opportunities for those who are seeking us out so that we can receive that. Because one of the things I realize is that our ancestors didn't have the privileges of, nursing homes, and didn't have the privileges of even orphanages, or didn't have the privileges of some
anything.
of anything. And so they looked out for one another,
That's right.
even if they didn't have the same last name. So that's brilliant that you would make that connection.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that we understood here, because see, I think one of the things when I look at this, and of course we can say 1619, but when you're in the moment, you don't know how long this race will be.
Mm-hmm.
We in 2020 can say how long this race will be, and even being in this race, we still don't know how much longer it
Yeah.
will be. And so we have always lived in the question. So it's not always about the finish line for us, because we don't know that. That's ambiguous, and there's an ambiguity about it. But
Mm-hmm.
what we have always realized, that in this very moment, how do we make our lives matter?
Yeah.
What do we do to not only leave, as you would say, Emmett, a blueprint, but also leave a kind of oral, because at one point we couldn't write, now, and a written history, because what we do believe, and I think our ancestors really believe this. Oh, this is a long run. This is a long run. So with COVID, this is what I think about. I was thinking about this when I was walking yesterday, that I was comparing it to a marathon. And I've done the Boston Marathon, and I have to tell you, so when the gun goes off, we're running in the same direction, but not every one of us going to make it to the finish line. Has a lot to do with the reasons why we're not going to make it to the finish line. And the interesting thing is, I thought about it, because when you're running those towns, it starts at Hopkinton and it ends down in downtown Boston. There's no cheering in a lot of the along the path in those small towns that we're passing.
Mm-hmm.
We understand we may not we understand we get no cheers for that hard journey. And the middle point is my alma mater, Wellesley College. But even again, when you're running that race, again, there's no cheering, and you're running on fumes. And I can tell you this, and your thighs are hurting you, let alone your feet. But the thing is, you get to that heartbreak hill. Now, that is a turning point. Either you will continue that race or not. And I thought about our ancestors in this way. Now, some of the reasons why some of us make it, it's just some of us just the grit. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we just got it like that. But others, we got some nourishment along the way. Okay, so they had tables, where you can stop and get some, you can get some Gatorade, you can get a protein bar or whatever. And what has been our Gatorade has been our spirituality and
Mm.
our religion. What has been our protein bar has been the solidity and the solidness of our community. What has been in many ways our gas has really been the proverbs we've had,
Mm-hmm.
not only the religious Bible, but the Bible of living in everyday life.
I mean, what you said again is just really amazing, and I want to just kind of convert your analogy into very pragmatic and practical steps for our folks. So those of you who have been doing family Zooms and who have been
Hmm.
FaceTiming loved ones and who have been even doing conference calls to have these kind of spontaneous family reunions, during this holiday season, that's exactly what Irene is talking about in terms of rallying around one another. And even those of us who have committed to grow stronger in our faith traditions, right? Whatever that is. So some of us are praying more. Some of
Hmm.
us are spending more time reading the Bible, and not just reading the Bible, but seeing ourselves as an extension of the Bible. When I preach and when I teach, we know that the Bible, the Christian Bible that we have, has 66 books in it.
Books, yeah.
I say that let your life be 67, right? So that you see yourself as an extension of this biblical narrative that always has a sense of hope and have a sense of resilience within it. But I
Yeah.
think the last piece that I would say, again, based on your analogy, is that in this season, we need to do less social media and more socializing.
Yeah.
See, social media is not bad, but the socializing piece is what's important for us to
Hmm.
actually have deep and broad relationships where we can have dialogue with one another and not just pushing a like button and thumbs up here. I mean,
Let
like
me give
really.
you an example of
Mhm.
that here. Now, people who haven't been speaking to each other are now speaking to each other.
Oh.
Okay. I'll give you an example. My spouse's sisters here. Okay.
Mhm,
The two of them haven't spoken to each other in 5 years.
mhm,
Now they're setting up a weekly Zoom meeting every week, which I just think is important. But one of the biblical, if we're going to talk about biblical scripture, I have two. One of which is that has sustained us as a people. Though I will walk through the valley of death, I'll fear no evil.
Yeah.
But one way that we will not have to worry about the valley of death is not only the reservoir of information we have, but it's this new biblical scripture that I've been uplifting. And I sent you guys this. It's called First Isolation is 24/7. Okay. Stay your social distance. Stay your social, but actually in very practical ways here. Again, when I was lifting up that African American proverb, making a way out of no way, it really calls us to agency, creativity, as well as resistance and resilience. And so while we don't have an exact blueprint, there's enough to pull from to see what works for you. And so this is something that I think that as a people, we fear, but not out of fear of like we're falling in an abyss. Our fear is whether the agencies that are supposed to support us during this COVID will actually do that. But even if they don't, we as a people know how to get up on nothing, and
That's right.
and that's what we've been doing.
That's right. That's right. We can figure it out. I mean,
That's
we
right.
have figured it out. I do want to, again, make a little piece here about seek help.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to do a better job of seeking help with our elders or from our elders. Let me say that. If you need professional assistance, certainly
Mm-hmm.
get professional assistance. But there have
And
been,
there's no shame about it, because in
the,
our Black community, we have an enormous amount of stigma
yeah,
about mental health, and not to address it. We understand this, it's generational. This is why we talk about post-traumatic
slave syndrome.
slavery
Yeah,
syndrome,
yeah.
right? That even if you're not, it's some of our behavior we're not even cognizant of, because of generationally we have normalized it. So it's okay to be vulnerable in the face of your own strength.
It's okay to be vulnerable. It's also okay to be honest, and it's okay to be transparent. And I think in that sense, we have those who have gone a little further in life than we
Mhm.
have, who we can rely on. Those who have fought in the military and have come
Yes.
back home, and their home that they fought for didn't necessarily love them, let alone like them, and they have
Mm-hmm.
figured it out. Those who have gone on and who have paid the price for their crimes, and
Mm-hmm.
now are back out, and many of whom are doing well. We can
Mm-hmm.
talk to them about what does it mean to be resilient, what does it mean to be hopeful when it seems like the world has caved in on you and forgotten you.
And carve out it forces us really to slow down because we've been busy. It has us to really reckon with, a valued life. What really is important to me in the midst that every day, we're not promised every day. We learn that in church. We're
Yeah.
not promised every day. So in this day, how will I make who I am and what I do matter?
And the way that we have taught our children is, on
Hmm.
this day, let your little light shine.
That's right.
This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We'll be right back.
They call it Stormy Monday, but Tuesday's just as bad.
This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and we're back. That was blues singer Bobby Blue Bland on his 1962 album Here's the Man, singing that great classic Stormy Monday. Irene, we have titled this episode as Surviving the COVID Seasonal Blues. And so, as we have invoked the notion of the blues, I thought we needed to play some blues, but now let's talk about the blues.
Indeed, let's do.
What's important about the blues is that the blues is honest, and the blues is about relationship. Often, as the vocalist takes on the narrative arc of someone who is moving from a miserable situation or misery to
Hmm.
a hopeful situation and perhaps even hopeful resolution. The blues has been a phenomenon within the African American musical repertoire, but one that has been a balm, a medicine for
In
us.
Gilead, in
Yeah,
our Gilead.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting. It really defines the essence of the Black experience. It's affirming our struggle and our existence. You know, it's interesting. When I was a student, seminarian at Union Theological Seminary, James Cone, Professor James Cone, father of Black liberation theology, wrote a book about spiritual and the blues.
Mhm,
And he defined the blues as secular spirituals.
mhm.
You're the mythical. No, what is it? What is it called?
Musicology.
Musicologist. That's right. There you go. Yeah,
You
because
know,
he saw it was really no divide really between the sacred and the secular, because they both informed each other, opposite sides of the same coin in terms of Black experience.
One of the things that I find here, and I would even disagree a little bit with Dr. Cohn, because
Mm,
it's not necessarily the secular version of the sacred. I actually think we find the sacred oftentimes in secular expressions.
all
And
right.
and so in many ways it makes sense that many of some of the greatest blues singers of all times even called themselves Reverend, even though they were not ordained. Right.
Okay.
So you have Reverend Long John and Reverend Gary Davis and all these blues singers that called themselves Reverend
But
because
wait, my favorite,
Mhm.
Reverend B.B. King. Wait, his guitar, Lucy.
Yeah, Lucille. That's right.
Lucille, that's
That's
right.
right.
Oh, and wait, Ray Charles.
I mean, we had so many phenomenal folks who understood this. And I don't think many people get this. We sing the blues to get rid of the blues,
Mm-hmm.
not to have the blues. And so we don't sing the blues to wallow and, be self-defeatist. We sing the blues to be honest, to
Mm-hmm.
be vulnerable, to be transparent.
And be
And
and be therapized. It's a
yeah,
form of therapy. It's our oral history. It's storytelling of being in the moment of not only what we're experiencing, but what we hope for in terms of resolution and sometimes redemption.
and so I think we need to sing the blues during this COVID seasonal slump that we're in. I think we need to be honest about the fact that things are not normal. I think we need to be transparent about the things that are paining us and that are hurting us. And then I think we need to be vulnerable about the fact that we are scared, we are afraid, we are frightened, we are, this is an unknown situation. And although there have been other pandemics across the land and across the world over time, there have
Nothing like
not been,
this.
nothing like this in our lifetimes.
That's right. That's right. And you know, the interesting thing is that it, I like when you said the honesty about it, because we get into this kind of toxic positivity. It's like, sing and be happy. No, sing and have the blues.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, this is a strange situation that we're in. And I think that, the hope is actually found in the fact that it is strange. I mean, really, I mean, that the fact is that this is a season where we have to reprioritize and recommit to the things that are important to us, to the people that are important to us, and then also that divine inspiration within us. Like now is the best time ever to go after it, whatever
That's
that
right.
it is, or to
Mm-hmm.
to do
Mm-hmm.
it, whatever that it is. And I often tell people, when you have visions and dreams that you can't explain where they come from, sometimes that's divine,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that's the inspiration that you need in order to pursue something perhaps that's entrepreneurial, pursue something that is meaningful for you, pursue something that nobody else but you
That's
would
right.
understand
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
it's your work to do.
It really provides an opportunity to live a more intentional life. With the COVID, we're seeing the fleetingness, the fragility, as well as the sacredness of every life. I've been listening to the news at night, and I like the feature pieces because they say, this person played the clarinet. This person couldn't dance, but loved dancing. It
Mhm.
really tells you the kind of, beautiful tapestry of the human spirit and of life, and, that light extinguishing.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about the light extinguishing, it also helps us to understand that life is not something that we can take for granted, something that is infinite, and that all of us must deal with our own mortality. And
That's
sometimes the
right.
way that we deal with our own mortality is choosing to live today, choosing to
Mm-hmm.
live with purpose, choosing to live with a sense of not so much, creating your legacy, but extending the legacy of those who have uh, catalyzed an opportunity for you. And so you invoke the ancestors before. It's really important for us to call out the names of those who were influences for us, and the names of those who are no longer with us, to remind ourselves that they had a dynamic impact on our lives.
Right. But interestingly, and I want to ask you this question, but I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. So one of the things that COVID made me really realize, what are what has been on my bucket list that I have not done and I can do without having to travel someplace here.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that I like about the internet, it has really dwarfed distances. It put you in spaces where I wouldn't normally be because traveling there, the expense of it, or even the cost of it. So let me tell you what I always wanted to be before I wanted to be a minister. I wanted to be a dancer. And so I'm doing dance lessons
Look
every
at you.
Thursday. That's right, honey. I'm getting my groove on. Okay. Getting my groove on. So I enjoy that. It becomes very important, particularly, as ministers, we're carrying the weight of a lot of
Mhm.
folks. As I shared with, this audience as well as you, I have been, officiating funerals.
Mhm.
So one of my light, again, at the end of, even if I've done a funeral on Thursday, is that I'm getting my groove on. And you know what kind of music I like?
Go on and
It's the
tell us.
best in the world. Other
What?
than Motown, disco. And you know what my anthem is? Because I used to go to Studio 54. Gloria. Okay, Naila. I Will Survive.
Yeah, Gloria Gaynor. Yeah.
Gaynor. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm thinking of the writer Gloria Naylor,
Nail it.
but
Hmm.
Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive. And that has been my anthem because really during the 80s was the AIDS epidemic.
Hmm.
And when disco stopped and the AIDS epidemic was rising and flourishing, um, I had Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive. And indeed, again, music will lift your spirit. But so I'm now doing disco dance and I haven't forgotten some of my steps. I still got it going on. Emmett, what about you?
Well, I'm not partying the Gloria Gaynor the way that you are, but what I am doing is musical. I have gotten back to practicing piano every day,
Oh,
and that's been a phenomenal treat, as I go back and do some of the things that help me to develop the skills and some of the the tools that help to breed talent.
mm,
And the other thing that I'm doing too, as a scholar, I always joke about the fact that we're paid to read and write. Well,
mm-hmm.
one of the things that I'm doing though is before I go to bed, I read Black poetry,
Do you
and so I have a
really?
book of
Oh,
anthology of poets, who I'm just going to reclaim some of these former voices that were so prophetic, because things that they had said yesterday are still relevant today and
Imama
tomorrow.
Baraka. Okay, yeah.
So
Gil Scott Heron.
so many brilliant,
That's right.
folks who had so much to say.
But can I talk about another brilliant person here? Emmett, you are a brilliant pianist. I went to hear Emmett last year at Jazz Vespers, and I had a driver take me there. And listen, I wasn't soliciting any response. And if he was bad, I would say, you know what? I came. Okay. But the driver said to me while we were sitting there listening to Emmett, he said, his fingers are like butter. So this is what I want you to promise us, that you will have one episode where you and your genius of a son, that prodigy, will play a little something something.
Well, I think I can do that. We can do that. We can do that. How about that? I'm committing right here, all revved up, folks. You heard it here. We're gonna do something in not too long, so
Okay.
that you can hear
And
what we're
eh,
doing.
I love that. And you know what? And I'll do a dance.
On that note, let me move to our benediction, because it's definitely time to go. For those of us deciding to stay home during the holiday season, choosing not to travel and creating new traditions, even if temporary, you are not alone. For those of us deciding, due to the necessity to travel, please stay safe and be encouraged. There is no judgment here. For those of us working hard to maintain the discipline of wearing our masks when we leave home, washing our hands constantly, and refraining from large gatherings on behalf of so many of us, thank you. For those of us who are the K through 12 college and graduate students, staring at screens for elongated and unhealthy amounts of time in order to accomplish learning, I commend you on your resilience and dedication. For those of us who are teachers, educators, guidance counselors, and building leaders, forced to make difficult and unpopular decisions due to global plague under the moniker of a global pandemic, I tip my hat to you for your commitment to your students and their growth. For those of us who are civil servants, first responders, healers, medics, surgeons, nurses, administrators, who are working beyond overtime and giving more than we could ever ask, God bless you. And may you continue to know that your labor is not in vain. For those of us who are the clergy, the counselors, the sponsors, the shelter and food pantry volunteers, the willing workers, may you receive a portion of your eternal reward here on earth so that you will know that you are not forgotten. For those of us weary and tired of having to sing the blues in order to recover our hope, inspire our healing, and to hold on to something that seems real enough to control, you are not alone. All in all, let us continue to care for, love, and cherish the us's rather than worrying about and getting ourselves all worked up about the thems. In the words of the old Negro spiritual, let us keep our eyes on the prize and hold on. Hold on to hope and hold on to one another. Amen.
Amen.
Ashe.
Ashe.
All Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls.
Music for this episode is brought to you by Reverend Price's son, musical prodigy Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH.
Additional thanks to Bob Kempf, Nina Perzuki, Chelsea Mers, Meredith Neerman, and Zach Waldman.
If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Feel free to send us a note, a question, or a comment to allrev'duppod@gmail.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of All Rev'd Up.